Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It is Flame once again from Team Legends and welcome back to another Union Arena deck discussion video. We are at the halfway point of our Hunter x Hunter set discussion. We've gone through both of the green decks of Hunter x Hunter, we've gone through both of the blue decks in Hunter x Hunter, and so now it is time to dive into a brand new color here in the second half of this set. We are going to discuss one of the two decks in the color of purple. As always, if you find yourself enjoying the video at any point, please leave a like and a comment down below and subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back for more of the content. And without further ado, I introduce to you Purple Zoldyck Family. Zoldyck Family was one of the two purple decks in Hunter x Hunter when the set first released back in 2024. Besides it and the Phantom Troop deck, the Zoldyck Family deck was the one that had a lot more promise out of the gate than the Phantom Troop deck, and it was further exemplified by the release of Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, where Zoldyck Family got arguably the most and best support in the second volume. The main focus of this deck, of course, is to make your opponent play your game. You choose characters on your opponent's field, and you gain effects if those characters happen to be sidelined at any point in the game. You can either draw cards off of the Raid Illumi, you can move cards from different lines, and you can even gain impact if you pick the correct card. As always, we'll go through the card by card discussion, the reasoning as to why each of the cards are in the deck at the ratios they are, and if you want to skip ahead at any point to our randomly generated 3-round tournament, there will be timestamps listed in the description where you can skip right ahead to the gameplay. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Breezing through a couple of the early cards here that really don't need any explanation as it is, and it's really going to be all three of the zeros that are in this deck. Starting off, of course, 4 copies of the 0-1 Finks, the lone Phantom Troop affinity that is in this deck, only because of the fact it is a 0-1 draw discard with the active trigger. He's in here at 4. Another mandatory 4 of 0 in the deck, of course, that doesn't really need any explanation, is 4 copies of the 0-1 Gitaracker, the Illumi by name, though it is a 0-1 get trigger. It is treated as Illumi while it's on the field, so it's essentially the Illumi raid target in here at 4 copies. Another 0 that's in this deck, of course, as a raid target is our 0-1 Killua Zoldyck, the brand new 0 that came in Hunter x Hunter Volume 2. He's another raid target with a get trigger. He's in here at 4, rounding out our 0 total to 12 total zeros. Next up for our 1-cost cards, we are only playing 4 1-cost cards, and it is 4 of the brand new 1-cost card Illumi that was released in Hunter x Hunter Volume 2. This card was one of 4 cards that was released as a brand new English exclusive card when Hunter x Hunter Volume 2 first came over to the United States. This 1-cost card, of course, will replace the former 1-1-cost card in the deck, the non-trigger Kikyo, which was a searcher for the Zoldyck family upon being sidelined, and obviously does help out a lot more in the deck as it gives the Illumi yet another raid target. His ability reads as follows: when this character is raided, choose up to 1 character on your opponent's field. You gain if the chosen character is sidelined, draw a card until the end of the turn. Resolve the raided character's when played abilities and this ability in any order. Now obviously this card was made to utilize the Raid Illumi's effect to its fullest ability. When played, the Illumi is able to choose a character, and if it dies you draw 2 cards. Now with this card you can choose another character on the field or the same character you're going to sideline, and you draw an additional card if that character happens to be sidelined. So if you choose the same character with both Illumis, you can draw 3 cards if the card is sidelined, or you can choose 1 character, and if it's sidelined you draw 2 cards, and you can choose another character on the field, and if that one gets sidelined you draw 1 card. The inclusion of this card in the deck really helps to solidify the Zoldyck family strategy that you really want to make your opponent think about the cards they're sidelining in order to not give you advantage or give you the least amount of advantage possible. On top of the fact, of course, he has the draw trigger, which is arguably better than the Kikyo that didn't have a trigger. He's in here at 4 copies. Next up, we move into our 2-cost cards. We are going to be playing 8 total 2-cost cards, starting things off with 4 copies of the 2-cost card Miluki. This card being a 3000 body with a draw trigger means he's pretty good wherever you find him. He can swing for a little bit of damage, and if you find him out of life, you also get to draw a card. When played, you are able to look at the top card of your deck, and you either leave it on the top of your deck or put it on the bottom. So the Miluki, when played, lets you sculpt the top of your deck in their early game states, so you can see what you're going to be drawing, and if you want to keep it there, you can. Otherwise, just put it right on the bottom of your deck. The other one of our 2-cost cards, that is another brand new card that we got in the release of Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, is 4 copies of the 2-cost card Killua. He has an ability that when played, you can choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line. It loses 1000 BP until the end of the turn. On top of his ability, he also is a Killua Zoldyck by name, meaning he is a suitable raid target for the upcoming raid Killua that we'll be discussing later on in the set. He does have some niche uses that you can use with the brand new color Illumi that we'll touch on here in a moment. And for all those reasons, we're leaving him in the deck at the maximum of 4 copies. Moving out of the 2 cost cards and into our 3 cost cards, these ones are going to be doing a lot of the double energy generating that we need to get up to the required 5 energy for this deck. Starting things off, of course, with 4 copies of the 3 cost double energy generating Killua Zoldyck. This card was released back in Hunter x Hunter Volume 1 and was one of the more powerful cards for the Zoldyck Family deck when the set was first released. He is a double energy generator, so you're going to want to play him in as many copies as possible because we are going to be losing a few double energy generators with the Illumis that we'll get to here in a moment. As I mentioned earlier that you're able to get certain abilities if cards are sidelined, this Killua was able to do some line shenanigans if a card happens to be sidelined. He has an activate main ability that can only be activated if a character on the field has been sidelined at a hard once per turn. That ability, of course, is to move this character to the other line, meaning that if he was already existing on the energy line, you can move him to the front line. And if he's sitting on your front line, you can move him back to the energy line to generate 2 more energy. Of course, if you do move him up to the front line, he does have a when attacking ability that will automatically activate since a card has been sidelined this turn. When attacking, if a character on your opponent's field has been sidelined this turn, this character gains 1000 BP until the end of the turn. Making this Killua that was instead attacking with 3000 BP will now be attacking with 4000 BP. It is a very niche instance that moving him from the back row to the front row, but it does come up sometimes, especially if you're making the late game push. And he is a card that your opponent's going to always have to be wary of as to whether or not he's going to be remaining on the energy line, or once you've finished up all your plays, will move up to the front line to provide another body to swing. Overall, I feel this is a very well-designed card for the central strategy of the deck, and it's in here at 4 copies. Sticking with the Killua names, we will be touching on another 3-cost card that's in the deck and another one of the main power threats that has been added in with the release of Volume 2, 4 copies of the brand new 3-cost Raid Killua Zoldyck. This card was a much-needed secondary power option to replace the Silva that was back in Hunter x Hunter Volume 1. This card also helped to define the Zoldyck family to become its own deck, instead of the Illumi just being splashed into the Phantom Troop deck as an extra engine. The Killua being a 3-cost raid is very powerful for the deck as it can get early swings as it's very small, and its ability is during your turn it gains 500 BP, making it a 4000 body. He also has an activate main ability that helps the Illumi to get a little bit more pressure on your opponent to choose the right cards that they want to sideline. His ability activates during the main phase and can only be used if he's residing on the front line. You choose any one of your opponent's characters, front line or energy line. If the chosen character is sideline or specifically blocks this character's attacks this turn, Killua will then gain impact until the end of the turn. Now, you can use this effect in multiple different ways. You can either do it in the early game states where you can choose an existing character on an opponent's front line and then only swing with a Killua. They can block it, but if they do, Killua gains impact. If they don't block it, he still gets in and deals the 1 damage regardless. You can also choose another character on your opponent's front line that is likely to die this turn at some point, whether it's to block a damage to Illumi or another attack, and if that character happens to be sidelined, then the Killua now becomes a 4000 impact. This card was insane when it first came out and really bolstered the Zoldyck family deck to that next tier status above the Phantom Troop deck, and really provided an extra element for the Zoldyck family deck to be not just relying on the Illumi, and instead people had to now be wary of when this Killua drops on the board, as it's no longer just damage 2 they have to worry about. Now we have a card with impact. We definitely knew that Killua was going to get some support in the second volume of Hunter x Hunter, as he was the title Zoldyck family character that was absent from the entire Zoldyck family deck back in Volume 1, but we didn't know that when Killua did come over, it was going to make this much of an impact, pun intended. Overall, I really enjoy this card and the element it brings to the deck, and it's no surprise why it's in here at the maximum of 4 copies. We'll now move on to the colors for the deck, and for the first time in our deck discussions, we are going to be dueling colors in the Zoldyck family deck. We are only going to be playing 2 copies of the 3-1 double energy generating Illumi color. His ability is very simple. When played, just draw a card on a double energy generator, so he's going to be residing on the back row for the majority of the game. He also is an Illumi by name, making him a raid target by virtue, and a much needed double energy generator for the deck. The other 2 colors we're playing in the deck is the brand new 4-cost card Illumi that was released with Hunter x Hunter Volume 2. This card is not being played at its full maximum, even though you'd assume a second wave color would get the special treatment over the original, but the fact that it's not a double energy generator kind of works against it. His ability is a very special ability that can only be used in certain instances. That ability, of course, is when played, if you have 3 or more other Zoldyck Family affinity cards on your field, you choose up to 1 character on your opponent's front line. It gains 1000 BP, and this character must block your opponent's attacks if able until the end of the turn. This card is almost a 2-card combo, as you need it in tandem with the aforementioned 2/1 Killua unless you are going after a smaller character. If the Illumi just gave the opponent's character that they have to block the attacks if able ability, the card would be very good. The problem that works against it is the character gains 1000 BP, so unless you're going after a character with 3000 or less BP to boost it up to then 4000, a lot of your cards won't be able to hit over the ones that are going to be force blocking. Especially if you're using it in tandem with the brand new Raid Killua that you choose 1 character, it has to block, and if you swing into it with a Killua and it force blocks, that Killua gains impact on top of killing the character. The problem is that a lot of the characters on your opponent's field that you want to get rid of are just too big because they're usually the raids. They have 4000 or even 5000 BP, and the fact that they have to get an additional 1000 BP on that means that they're really not going to get sidelined by anything that forces them to block. I was very confused and hesitant to put this card in the deck. We are playing it at 2, and it does have some instances that do pop up in the gameplay, so I encourage you to watch through that to see how it plays out. But if you don't want to play this card in the Zoldyck Family deck, I don't blame you. I thought I'd throw it in here just to see how it works. It works out okay, but probably no more than 2. The other 4-cost card we're playing in this deck is 2 copies of the 4-cost Zeno card. This card works as a pseudo-removal card in a deck that really needs removal to be its main focus to get going. His ability is quite conditional, but if you're able to pull it off, it will definitely help you out in the long run. On top of his 3500 BP, he has an ability that can only be activated if he's on the front line and by switching him to resting. You can choose 1 character on your opponent's front line with 4000 or less BP and sideline it. The Zeno in turn then gets placed into the removal area. Essentially, the Zeno works as a special outside of a special. You are able to remove any character on your opponent's front line, provided it has less than 4000 BP, and it activates during the main ability, which, if you've already utilized your Raid Killua or Raid Illumi effect to gain some advantage, the Zeno can then sideline the card, and you're able to get the advantage, whether it's impact, moving a card to another line, or drawing a few cards. I tested it in this deck at 2 copies just to see how well it would work. It does come up a few times, and if you want to have a more heavy removal, you're more than welcome to play in your own Zoldyck Family deck at 4, but for the purposes of this video and the 3-round tournament, he's in this deck at 2 copies. The last character that we need to touch on here in our Zoldyck Family deck is, of course, the main power of the deck, 4 copies of the Raid Illumi. The Raid Illumi was really the defining character in the deck that made it the control deck that it was, and a lot of the new support that we got in Volume 2 was tutored to facilitate that strategy. He's a 5-cost raid with 4000 BP and damage too. His ability reads that when played, you choose up to 1 of your opponent's characters, frontline or energy line. You gain, draw 2 cards if the chosen character is sidelined until the end of the turn. As I mentioned earlier with the 1-cost Illumi, that is usually going to be the raid target that you're going to want to raid Illumi on top of, you can now choose multiple characters on the board with the effect in order to get more advantage, or you can pick the same card, and if it goes, you draw 3 cards. This card definitely will require a lot of practice to get it down perfectly. You can casually use his effect, and sometimes you might get lucky with your opponent blocking it, but the more times you play this card, the better the results can be, and the more you're going to be able to warp your opponent's decisions into the way you want it to be. Rounding out our deck, we've got a few event cards that we need to touch on here. 4 copies, of course, of the main special in the deck. Released back in Volume 1 of Hunter x Hunter, you choose 1 character with 3000 or less in your opponent's front line and sideline it. If you have 3 or more Zoldyck Family affinity cards on your field, it's 5000 instead. With how key removal is in this deck, you're going to want to see it as many copies as possible. No surprise that a special's in here at 4, as well, of course, as 4 copies of the final in the deck, Underworld Resident. So that about wraps up our deck discussion here. Once again, the full breakdown of all the cards and the ratios, we'll be playing that here in our 3-round tournament. The wheel is queued up, our opponents are ready. Let's not waste any more time and get into the games. It is now time to turn our attention back to the Wheel of Union Arena decks just to see who it's going to be that will be taking on our brand new Zoldyck Family deck in the opening round of our randomly generated 3-round tournament. And it looks like we will be going against another deck that has gotten some recent support in a Volume 2. It will be the Red Tengen Uzui deck from Demon Slayer Volume 2. The red Tengen deck is going to be an interesting matchup to take on in our opening round, as this is speed versus control. The red Tengen deck obviously wanted to get going quickly and powerfully to allow itself to get the advantage, and we have to try and control the game to go as long as possible to get our first win. You're going to see a double Gitchracker to start things off here. Tengen, of course, winning the die roll and taking the first move, as it normally does, is going to go ahead and establish an energy line first and foremost, as it's not really too worried about the Gitchrackers to start things off. However, thanks to the new support that we got in Volume 2, our Zoldyck Family deck is able to go a little bit faster, as we're able to raid a Killua on our second turn, unfortunately going to be running into a special right off the bat. With one special out of the way, it's a little bit detrimental, as now Tengen will be allowed it to do what it does best in getting early swings, as the first raid Tengen drops on the board when played gets double attack for the turn. Going to swing in for 1 damage and hit 2 non-triggers, one with an active and the other one as a draw, so we're already back on life 5, life to 6. It is at this point, however, that we're able to control it a little bit more in our favor. We're going to play Killua to drop the BP of the Tengen, raid an Illumi to choose the Tengen. If it happens to be sidelined this turn, we're able to draw 2 cards, and the Killua will choose the Tengen likewise, that if it gets sidelined, is going to get impact. It's going to block the damage too, and we're able to draw 2 cards off of it, and a free swing for the Killua hits a draw trigger, but we're now evened up at life at 5 points apiece. With the controlling of the front line of both the Illumi and the Killua here, we're in pretty good shape, as on the back row, there are the brand new 3 Wives card, the Suma, Makio, and Hinatsuru, which is going to be moved up to the front line. Going to play a Tengen on the back line and another Tengen. Going to total concentration breathing and restand some APs, and play the 4-2 Tengen that was back in Demon Slayer Volume 1. The Wives are going to swing in with 4,000 BP. We're going to hit an active trigger and choose our Illumi, but when the 4-2 Tengen attacks, it's going to swap the Wives with the Zenko, which when they swap, the Zenko is now going to be 3,500 BP, which we really should have given the active trigger to our Killua instead, which would preserve 1 life. However, we're not going to be burned too bad by the life, as we're going to be hitting a purple color trigger out of life, which will replenish our front line with yet another Killua. Trying to go as fast as possible and keep up with the onslaught that the Tengen deck is putting up here early on in the game. Going to be drawing, and we see another Underworld Resident in hand. The Gitchracker is going to be played, and we're going to play our 3rd copy of Underworld Resident. Only 1 left in the deck. Going to take care of the Tengen with a special, the Dragon Head, and then we're going to raid another Killua, choosing the Zenko. If it happens to be sidelined this turn, we're going to be able to get impact on our Killua. Damage 2 will swing, and it'll be gone away. So 2 free shots are coming in. One is an active trigger, and the second one is going to be a final. But we once again have the advantage in our favor. It's just back and forth, pound for pound for each of these decks to see who's going to be the one to break the other board first. 3 Wives are going to move up once again, play Inoko on the back line, and then we're going to raid another Tengen. The Tengen, of course, will be getting the ability of double attack, another total concentration breathing, and another 4-2 Tengen to drop on the front line. This is going to be potentially 5 swings coming through, as the 4-2 will once again be able to move things from the back line to the front line. The Wives, of course, are going to be 4,500 BP in thanks to the ability of the raid Tengen on the board. The double attack will swing first for 1, and we'll hit another active trigger. We're going to choose to give our active trigger to the Illumi on our board instead. Second, the Wife will swing in, but blocked out by Illumi. 4-2 Tengen attacks, and he's going to swap in with another Tengen, which that one's going to be 4,000 BP. We'll hit a draw trigger, and now unfortunately we're just going to have to block out to preserve our last life, as the last card we just drew there was our final Underworld Resident. So no final remaining in life, and it is all or nothing for the final turn. Going to play Finks in order to get a draw discard. We draw into a 0 Killua, pitch off a Maluki in hand, restand our AP with the last Underworld Resident, and now it's a choice as to what we want to do to try and preserve our life, to go defensive or offensive. We're going to play the new color Illumi, choosing the Tengen. It's going to be forced to block this turn, and going to be raiding an Illumi that's going to swing in the damage 2, draw 2 cards. Another damage 2 will be swinging in. Unfortunately, the Tengen player will be just allowed to take this, as nothing else will be getting through for the remainder of the turn. Hits a draw trigger, and unfortunately on 3 bodies, it's going to be a full back row push for our Tengen player. Just going to replenish the back line, sculpt the card with a Zenko, then swing in with the 5 bodies that are going to be going through, and that will do it for game 1. Well, 1 round in the books, an 0-1 start for the Zoldyck family is a little unfortunate, but we kind of knew that was going to be happening with a Blitz Rush deck versus a more control-style strategy, so we'll see if anything changes here for round 2, and it looks like it will be pseudo-control versus control, as it is the Kisho Juzo deck from Tokyo Ghoul taking on the Zoldyck family here in round 2. This deck has been making a lot more waves in the meta. It's had a few toppings in the last few regionals we've had in the North America region, and is really one of those decks that it does take a skilled pilot to really make this deck go perfectly, such as the way as our Zoldyck family deck. We are able to win the die roll, and we'll take the opening move against the Keyshow deck, which is something we weren't able to do against Red Tengen back in round 1. So we'll see if we have a little more luck being able to set the early pressure on our opponent here in this second round. Choices in our hand as to whether or not we're going to be playing a Killua in the hand. Instead, we're going to be going for the brand new 1/1 Illumi to set up for future turns. The Juzo is going to be moving up from the energy line, is going to play Keyshow and an Akira Mato on the back row, now generating 4 energy, hitting a Miluki draw trigger out of life, will give us just a few more cards of advantage. We'll see what we can do with it. Going to play Miluki on the front line, going to sculpt the top card of our deck, going to be playing the color Illumi to draw that card that we just saw on the top of the deck with the Miluki, and we're going to be choosing to use our last AP to raid our Killua. Killua will choose the Suzuya on the opposing board. If it blocks, you get impact. Instead, it'll just go through, hitting an active trigger, and we've managed to bounce back and do 1 damage apiece through our first full turn. Good to see the Keyshow moving up from the back line, still generating 3 energy. He's going to play the first copy of Take Hirako, which is going to look through the top 5 to try and find a Arima among the top 5 cards. Not able to find it this time through, which is fortuitous for us. Still a few AP left for our Keyshow player, and he's going to go for Hirako again to see if he can find the Keyshow. And the very last card, yes, a raid Keyshow has been found, which will be added to the hand, forcing to discard a 0-cost Keyshow into the sideline if one has been added. Going to use the copy of AP Flipper, going to play Keyshow on the front line, and another raid Arima is going to be played right from the hand as we just searched it off. This one will be gaining damage 2 on its first attack, and if any card happens to be sidelined this turn, the Keyshow will allow the player to draw a card and will restand it active, but it will lose its damage 2. Going to block it with the Miluki, which will restand the Keyshow and draw our opponent a card, swinging in and hitting an Underworld Resident, and that will do it for the turn. The Keyshow has another sort of Kenshin ability in tandem with Kaoru that if you ever wanted to get rid of it through any ability, you have to pitch an extra card out of your hand as cost. So we'll see just what we have to do in order to clear this board. We're going to start things off by playing a copy of Killua, dropping the damage to Keyshow by 1000 BP. Going to play the color Illumi to regain that 1000 BP, but it has to block this turn. Going to use an Underworld Resident, restand some action points. Going to play the Raid Killua, and that Raid Killua is going to end up choosing the Keyshow. That if it happens to block this character's attack this turn, the Killua will gain impact. And then we're going to use the Dragon Head to take out the Raid Keyshow, pitching our last card out of hand in order to out him. Going to be attacking with a Killua that's going to force to block and deal impact, hitting a draw trigger, and another impact is going to be swinging through to deal another point of damage, but this one with a non-trigger. So seemingly in good position here after a very strong turn, but unfortunately we have no cards left in our hand and are going to be relying a lot on life triggers and AP draws for the remainder of the game. You see a copy of Hirako moving up to the front line here, generating 5 energy on the back row. The color Juzo is going to be played on the back line. And we'll see our first Raid Juzo being played out of the hand, which mandatorily forces us to sideline 1 character on our front line. Going to hit a Gitracker out of life as the Juzo will be swinging in with impact. Also, our opponent's going to choose to swing in with the other Juzo, knowing they're not going to be able to get through. But that Juzo has an ability that if something's been sidelined this turn, you're able to draw a discard. So getting an extra card of advantage, even though the attack will not succeed. Going to play a copy of Finks on our back line, generating 5 energy, pitching off a Gitracker, and now we're going to see our first Raid Illumi drop and the first use of the brand new Illumi in tandem with our Raid. Going to be choosing multiple cards. We choose the Hirako. If it happens to be sidelined, we're going to be drawing 1 card, and choosing the Juzo Suzuya, the 1 cost. If it happens to be sidelined, we're drawing 2 cards. Going to be using the Killua's ability of Activate Main, choosing the Hirako on 1 and the Juzo on the other, and if either of them go, they're going to be getting impact this turn. Able to draw 1 card as the damage 2 will not connect. Swinging in with impact with one of our Killuas is going to trip another Raid Juzo out of life, which is going to be played, taking care of one of our Raid Killuas, and the last one going to be swinging through with another impact as well against 2 Juzos. Going to hit a yellow color trigger out of life, which will stun our Illumi for the next turn. Already double Juzo impact on 4 life is really not a good sign for us. We're going to see another color Juzo on the back line, and a third Raid Juzo with impact is dropped on the board. We are now on a 2-turn clock as we're forced to sideline our Illumi. 1 impact swing through, get trigger, another one, get trigger, another one, active trigger, too little too late, as this is the pseudo final turn here with triple impact staring us down. We do have 1 way to get impact for Killua, but the problem is we won't have enough to get another impact unless we play our cards right. Going to take an extra draw here, trying to draw any out here. Going to move both the Gitracker and the Finks up to the front line. Be playing a Killua on the energy line, and then going to be raiding our last Killua. And unfortunately, our opponent knows that he can block in the correct order. Only 2 characters can be selected by our Killuas here in order to give them impact. We're going to swing in with 1 Killua. and choosing whether or not to give it impact. If it is blocked correctly, it's just going to be a 4,000 body at this point, with which the Juzos do not have to block. They don't. It's going to be hit a draw trigger. And the problem is that the one that can block the kill was going to be the one that wasn't targeted through the effect, so will not get impact. Not able to get through that last life, 2 impact staring us down. And our opponent just has to attack directly, but is going to be taking a couple more hits, getting rid of our Killua, and that will do it for game 2. Well, 2 unfortunate rounds down, only 1 more to go here in our randomly generated 3-round tournament. Let's see if we can get any deck that will give us the chance to get 1 win here in the 3-round tournament, and we might have a good chance here going into the final round. It will be Control versus a pseudo-aggro deck in our Zoldyck family, taking on the Purple Black Bulls deck from Black Clover. This set works very similar to the CCG deck back in Tokyo Ghoul, as it revolves around having a certain number of cards with the same name on the board at the same time, this one being Black Bull Affinity versus CCG Affinities. The problem is that the deck is very small. It can get going very quickly. It has power with the Raid Asta and the 4-2 Yami, which is just a pseudo removal if you have the right number of Black Bull cards on your field at the same time. We are able to find our Illumi early here, and it'll be moved up to the front line. Going to replenish our back row with a Gate Tracker and a Miluki, checking the top card if we want to keep it there. Instead, we do not. Swinging in for the first damage and giving our opponent a Raid Asta out of life. Of course, the Raid is a 4-drop, so we might be seeing it this turn. We'll see Magna being played. We'll be pitching off another Magna as a draw discard. If you have another Black Bull on the field, going to be raiding the Asta up to the front line, which will not have the ability of impact unless there are 4 more other Black Bull affinities on the field at the same time. You're going to see a copy of Gauche being played, targeting the Magna on the sideline, allows the opponent to free play back a Magna from the sideline, which allows them to draw discard once again, pitching off a Luck. This Asta will swing in for impact, hitting an Underworld Resident. The Magna, unfortunately for our opponent, is sidelined at the end of the turn due to the Gauche's effect, so 1 damage dealt for both sides. Playing a Killer Illumi on the back row, allowing us to then raid Illumi as we now have the 5 required energy. Dragonhead will take care of the Asta, drawing us the 2 cards as it was targeted by the Illumi. The Asta can replay its base rated card back to the field, resting on if they pitch a Black Bull out of hand, and they do so. Damage 2 will swing in, hitting a Raid Asta out of life and a Noelle, which will be raided up to the front line once again. So 2 Raid Astas already out of the way, 1 on the board and 1 resting in the sideline. But now the Black Bull can really start to get going, as another Magna is played to the front line, drawing discard, and using 2 AP, or excuse me, 1 to use the AP flipper, and then playing the Yami on the board, which is just going to instant sideline our Illumi. He'll be swinging in with 1 impact, and it's going to hit an active trigger, which will stun the rest of the attacks here, as the Illumi is just too big to deal with. We'll now be able to move our Miluki up to the front line as a 3,000 body. We'll play a Finks on the back row, drawing and discarding, pitching away an extra Miluki. Play a Gate Tracker, and then immediately raid an Illumi on top of it, choosing the Magna that if it happens to be sidelined this turn, we get to draw another 2 cards. Of course, it will be blocked out as damage 2 comes in. The Miluki will not be swing enough to hit over anything else, as everything else on the board is 4,000, 4,000, and 3,500, but we are able to get 2 cards off of it, so not exactly the worst case scenario. We see a Black Bull's Hideout being played, which will pick another copy of the Black Bull's Hideout away, as it is a Black Bull Affinity, allowing our opponent to draw 2 cards, and then going to choose to use the last AP to raid the 3rd Asta onto the front line, of course, with both impact. Yami will swing in and will boost Magna up to 3,000. The Asta will swing in with impact and will run into a Dragonhead special, which should take care of the other raid Asta. The base rated card will be able to be played back to our opponent's front line, resting and then immediately active as the turn is over, so they are able to replenish their board to a full front line of 4 characters. Play another Color Illumi on the back row, generating another 5 energy as well as drawing a card. See a copy of Underworld Resident being played, and choices to what to do. We're going to be choosing to play our new Color Illumi, choosing the Asta, and it'll be forced to block this turn. And then we're going to play a Zeno on the back row instead, swinging in with a damage 2, which is a little bit of a misplay. We probably should have picked something else to forcibly block the shot. We might have been able to take care of yet another character on the board, but instead we are able to replenish our front line and stay in a pretty comfortable position if we're tied at 4 life apiece. See an Asta played and then a Luck, which will be able to switch itself active as there are enough Black Bulls on the opposing board to set it active. Yami will swing in first, then a 3,000 Magna, another impact hitting in, which will give us another Raid Illumi to our hand off of a life trigger. Just down by 1 life, but we should be able to bounce back from that pretty quickly here, as we're able to now move our Zeno up to the front line and utilize its ability as it is an activate main, switching to resting on the front line only. Choosing over our options here, we are generating 5 energy to see what we can do with it. We are going to raid one of our Illumis on top of the color Illumi, which will choose the Magna if it happens to be sideline this turn, or excuse me, the Asta. And when sideline, we're going to be able to draw 2 cards as it was sideline off of the Zeno ability. All of that, only using 1 AP, is pretty strong as we're able to draw 2 cards of advantage and take care of a problem card that isn't coming back as our opponent doesn't have a Black Bull Affinity in hand to play. Going to use a copy of Dragon Head to take care of the Yami, and now a damage 2 Illumi will be swinging in. We'll be taking the damage 2. It'll be a color trigger and a final, which the color trigger will play back the Noelle, which allows our opponent to go to the top 4 of the deck, looking for a Black Bull Affinity card. And they're going to choose to grab another Yami and pitch away an AP flipper. Another damage 2 will swing in. It'll be blocked up by a Magna. Then a 4,000 color Illumi will swing in, and it will hit an active trigger too little too late to matter, as now it is going to be just a hard push for the very end to try and take out that last life. 1 Raid Killua should do the trick to get the ability of impact, and we already have it in our hand, so we just have to survive this turn to get the impact. Opponent is going to take the extra draw here, and then we're going to move up the Charmy from the energy line. Going to play 2 and play a Vanessa, which allows them to replay back the Raid Asta from the sideline and put it up to the front line. So filling up the front line with 4 bodies, swinging in with the impact is going to hit an active trigger, which will give it to the Illumi, and nothing else is going to be getting through this turn for our opponent. And now it should be just rounding things out and cleaning up this game. Going to take an extra draw, trying to draw a little bit more advantage. Going to play the Illumi, which will target the Charmy. She's forced to block this turn. And then we are going to use our last AP to play that Raid Killua, using his activate main, targeting the Charmy, swinging in, she blocks, deals impact, and that will do it for game 3. Well, here we are after our 3-round tournament, and honestly, a little disappointed with how things turned out. A 1-2 record isn't exactly the best showing for this deck, but it is a deck that requires a lot more focus and practice in order to play it perfectly. With the games out of the way, we can now break down the objective pros and cons of the deck, starting, of course, with the pros. First, it forces your opponent to play your game. With both raids in the deck having conditional abilities that revolve around your opponent's decision, you'd think you wouldn't be able to get their effects to resolve. However, the choices you're giving them aren't really beneficial for them and are more beneficial for you, and sometimes those effects aren't even optional. Those decisions effectively make your opponent do exactly what you want to do to either give yourself numerous cards in advantage or get rid of a problem card. Second, it is great at removing problem cards. Having a card like the Zeno in the deck to just remove anything with 4,000 or less BP on top of the specials already in the deck is super strong and useful to have. The deck also has ways to force your opponent to block with characters that they may or may not have wanted to block with at that time, courtesy of the new color Illumi. With so many different forms of removal, it is very challenging for your opponent to know what cards are going to be safe from the Zoldyck Family onslaught. And third, it has great early pressure. Thanks to the brand new Raid Killua that we got in Hunter x Hunter Volume 2, the deck no longer has to wait to get up to a maximum of 5 required energy to play some of their big cards. Back in the day, you had to wait to 5 to play either the Silva or the Raid Illumi, but now you don't have to. With Killua able to come out as early as turn 2 or 3 if you're lucky, you can get off to a quicker start and take control of the game earlier than was previously possible. And now, of course, for the cons. First, it only likes to play its own game. As is the case with a lot of other control decks in trading card games, they like to focus on playing their game and their game alone, and Zoldyck Family is no exception. As we saw in the game versus Red Tengen, the deck struggled to match the speed and intensity that the opposing deck was putting up and quickly lost control of the game, ultimately losing that match. When the deck is able to control the pace of the game, it typically does pretty well. But if it finds itself on the back foot, it has a hard time regaining that control and just can't do enough to seal the deal. Second, it is very reliant on its ability to remove cards. While other decks in the game typically use that removal as an extra bonus to take care of problem cards, Zoldyck Family needs cards to be sidelined to make use of their abilities. Both the raids and the 3-cost Killua need cards to be sidelined to either get impact, draw you extra card, or for the case of the double energy generator, move off to the different line. If the deck can't get its removal, you're not going to be getting the most value of your cards that would have more of an impact if the cards were sidelined before combat. Third, it takes a skilled pilot to make full use of the deck. This isn't necessarily a bad thing that a deck needs to have a skilled player to really play the deck well, but if you've never played this deck before and really wanted to try it out, it's a lot less beginner friendly than some of the other decks that we've covered already in this set, and will require just a lot more time and effort to see relative success. Despite the 1-2 record, I think this deck still has incredible potential. I haven't played this deck nearly enough, as is evident with a 1-2 record, and with the last point that it needs a lot of practice in order to see relative success. I did play this back when we had the Hunter x Hunter rare battle, and was ultimately able to win the entire thing with this deck. So don't let my gameplay really be the defining factor as to whether or not you want to play this deck. I encourage you to give it a try, if not just to see how much fun this deck can be. But that's going to wrap things up here for another Union Arena deck discussion video. Thank you all so much for joining us through the entire roller coaster of a ride we had through this video. If you have not already, please leave a like on the video and a comment down below as to your favorite part of the video. Subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back and enjoying the content, and we'll see you again soon for another Union Arena deck discussion video.